Hare Krishna. So welcome again to another reading in Transcendental Literature, continuing our reading in the Renunciation Through Wisdom, book by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-vedanta Swami Prabhupada, when he was a householder living in India. 1954s? Somewhere around then. I can't really remember. Towards the end of his grhastha life. At any rate, we're reading in this section is called Science of Devotion, and this particular segment is Lord Krishna alone is the Supreme Godhead. Everyone else is his servant. So we left off the section in this segment. Prabhupada was talking about how the demigods are the energetic portions of Krishna, and Krishna is their energy, and Krishna is the energetic, meaning that the demigods are the power, and Krishna is the powerful. He has all the power. And so those that worship the demigods instead of worshiping Krishna are less intelligent. And generally people with material desires are attracted to the demigods. But nevertheless, if you have material desires, you should still approach Krishna for the fulfillment of them, because at least you approach the actual source of all the energies of whatever the demigods would give to somebody. They're still going to have to get that from Krishna first. So that's kind of where we are now. See here, so I'll read the last sentence, and then Prabhupada quotes a verse from Bhagavad-Gita, and then we'll just continue reading from there. So Prabhupada says here, those who are too attached to fulfilling their material desires are naturally more attracted to the energy than to the energetic, the source of that energy. Hence, in the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 7, verses 21 and 22, Lord Krishna says, quote, I am in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, and as soon as one desires to worship some demigod and make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity, endowed with such faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtain his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Unquote. So Krishna is speaking. The demigods' powers are like those of a king's officers. The demigods have no independent powers because they are jivas, minute living entities. An officer of the king can bestow some favors because of the powers invested in him by the king. Similarly, a demigod can shower benefits upon his worshipper because the Supreme Lord has given the demigod some power. If the desire-filled demigod worshipper becomes a little enlightened about the fact that the demigod he worships is fulfilling his desires only by the grace of Lord Krishna, then with clear intelligence he will begin worshipping Lord Krishna directly. Different demigods have different powers. The sun god has the power to cure diseases. The moon god imbues plants with taste and nutritional or medicinal potency. Goddess Durga gives strength and courage. Goddess Sarasvati bestows learning. Goddess Lakshmi grants wealth. Goddess Chandi offers one the opportunity to consume meat and intoxicants. And Ganesha gives success in one's endeavors. But all these powers are invested in the demigods by the Supreme Lord, and thus only He, the complete whole, can bestow every kind of benediction. There is an immeasurable difference between a well and the ocean. We have already touched on the point that everything in the world has been produced by the interaction of the Lord's Kshetra Shakti, his inferior energy comprising of the fields of action, and his Kshetra Gya Shakti, his superior energy, which is the knower of the field, the spirit soul. Therefore, everything in this world is merely a transformation of Lord Krishna's energies. In one sense, the energy principle and the energetic principle are non-different. just as fire and its burning potency are inseparable and non-different. Unfortunately, the impersonalists, the monistic philosophers, have wreaked havoc in the world with their misguided opinions concerning transformation of the Lord's energy. Demigods and all other living entities belong to the energy principle, as does the material nature itself. No one but the Lord and his plenary expansions are in the category of the energetic principle. Thus the energy and the energetic are one and different. A person who cannot grasp the subtle principle of simultaneous, inconceivable oneness and difference of the Lord and his energies will surely degenerate into an impersonalist or a Mayavadi. He will be forced from the path of devotion and become silent. The Supreme Lord, the source of all opulence, is the energetic principle. If we consider him to be impersonal, then we limit his absoluteness. The words, quote, Supreme Absolute, unquote, are applied to Lord Krishna alone. The Lord is the absolute principle, unequaled and unsurpassed. Thus the Vedas say he is one without a second. The Lord's energies are manifested in various forms, and those who become bewildered by these variegated manifestations end up becoming polytheists. It should be clear that to all that whatever variegatedness we see in the universe is but a transformation of the Supreme Lord's diverse energies. The Mayavadis reject the theory of transformation of energy and subscribe to the theory of the transformation of Brahman itself. Thus they become fixed in their belief that Brahman is impersonal. The Supreme Lord has described the specific situation in which he manifests himself in his impersonal form. There are many quotes from the scriptures substantiating this point. The Supreme Lord, by manifesting both his personal and impersonal features, has firmly established the principle that the Supreme Absolute Person is inconceivably and simultaneously one with and different from his energies. This philosophical conclusion, called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, has been explained by Lord Krishna himself in the Bhagavad-Gita 7:12. Mata eveti tan vidhi natvaham teshu te mayi. Quote, I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, for they are, on the contrary, are within me. Unquote. The Supreme Energetic is the source of all energies, yet although all energies emanate from him, he remains aloof from the workings of these energies. From this we can conclude that the demigods' extraordinary potencies are an intrinsic part of the Supreme Lord's potencies, but that the demigods are separate from the Lord. Hence the boons granted by demigods benefit the recipient only temporarily. Lord Krishna confirms this fact in Bhagavad-Gita 7:23. Antavatu palam te sham, tad bhavat telpamedasham. Devan deva yajo yanti, mad bhakta yanti mamapi. Quote, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. Unquote. We have already discussed that if fruitive workers filled with fruitive desires approach the Supreme Lord instead of going to the demigods, then the benedictions they receive from the Supreme Lord will be everlasting. They will automatically rise a step higher in the ladder of yoga, from fruitive activities to Jnana-yoga, or the path of absolute knowledge. This means that instead of being elevated to the heavenly planets within this material world, they will attain liberation in the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord's spiritual abode beyond this material world. The demigod worshippers go to the planets of the demigods, the heavenly planets, which are temporary. Once a person's accrued piety is used up, he has to come back to earth. On the other hand, once the devotees of the Supreme Lord attain to Vaikuntha, his supreme abode in the spiritual sky, They never have to return to this world of mortality. That ends that segment. Next segment is Lord Krishna incarnates in Kali Yuga in the form of his holy name. This will be good. Persons with meager intelligence worship the demigods for fleeting fortunes. So one may ask, quote, if by worshipping the Supreme Lord one can have all his desires fulfilled, why doesn't everyone worship him? Unquote. Devarshi Narada once answered a similar question posed by Yudhishthir Maharaj. The sage said, Mahaprasade Govinde Nam Brahmani Vaishnave Swalpa Punya Vatam Rajan Vishvaso Nevajayate. O king, a person with little piety can never develop faith in Lord Govinda, his mercy, his holy name, or his pure devotees. Unquote. So, Lord Krishna has corroborated this in the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 7, text 28. Yeah. Desham tvantagatam papam jananang punyakarmanam te dvandva mohanirmukta bhajante mam dritavrataha. Quote, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Unquote. Persons with a demoniac mentality are steeped in sin, hence their understanding of the importance of spiritual knowledge is nil. Those who have been able to eradicate their sins by living according to the doctrates of their social and spiritual order, and who have acquired sufficient piety, are qualified to practice karma yoga. Gradually they progress to jnana yoga, and finally, in meditation, they realize the transcendental and supreme position of the Lord. Such highly fortunate realized souls can see in their hearts the eternal, transcendental, two-handed form of the Supreme Lord known as Shyamasundara, playing his flute. The description of the Lord in Sri Brahma Samhita 530 reads, Venum kvanantam aravinda dalaya taksham Bharavatam samasitam buddha sundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya visheshishobham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept at playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head bedecked with peacock feathers, and with the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. Unquote. Those who are committing sins like illicit sex, fault-finding, and unjustified violence rarely attain spiritual knowledge or realization. Sinful activities deepen the dark gloom of ignorance, while pious activities bring the light of transcendental knowledge into one's life. This knowledge culminates in realization of Krishna. However, simply performing pious activities does not make one eligible for God realization. Only when a person performs pious activities and associates with saintly persons does spiritual knowledge dawn on his consciousness. Then, when he transcends the platform of duality, especially when he no longer takes part in the controversy of the absolute truth's monistic or dualistic existence, he sees Lord Krishna in his enlightenment and worships him with determination as one without a second, matchless and supreme. In the perfected stage of pious activities, the mode of goodness dominates the consciousness, dissipating the darkness of nescience and illusion, which are products of the modes of ignorance. As soon as the mode of passion is fully subdued, spiritual realization illuminates the sky of one's consciousness. The point to consider at this juncture is, does anyone in the present age, Kali Yuga, have the means to properly perform such pious activities as fire sacrifices, giving in charity, penances, or austerities? It is universally accepted that the unfortunate people of Kali Yuga are absolutely unable to undertake such extravagances. For this reason, Lord Chaitanya, the most munificent incarnation of Godhead, and the savior of the Kali Yuga, has declared the truth of the following mantra from the Brihadaranyaka Purana. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalu nastyeva nastyeva nastya eva gatir anyata. Quote, in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Chanting the holy names of the Lord. Chanting the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Unquote. In the age of Kali, the only process for attaining perfection is to hear, chant, and remember the holy name of the Supreme Lord. Numerous quotes from the scriptures substantiate this. All inauspiciousness is destroyed by chanting the all-auspicious name of Lord Krishna. The Srimad Bhagavatam 12.12.55 confirms this. It's a lot of Sanskrit, and I don't know it. So I'll just read the English quote. Remembrance of Lord Krishna's lotus feet destroys everything inauspicious and awards the greatest good boon. The greatest good fortune. It purifies the heart and bestows devotion for the Supreme Soul, along with knowledge enriched with realization and renunciation. Renunciation through wisdom. Unquote. Therefore, to remain beyond the reach of delusion and duality, one has to always remember and meditate on the beatific form of Lord Krishna, who has a darkish complexion and is playing his flute. One must also remember and chant the holy name of Krishna, which is non-different from him, its nature being eternal, perfect, pure, and independent. In the Bhagavad-Gita 8:6-7, Lord Krishna explains the importance of remembering him always. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam chidantante kalevaram tang tam mevaiti kunteya sarad tadbhava bhavitaha tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmarayu mayarpita manopudir mam mevaishasya sangshayaha. Quote, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without a doubt. Unquote. At the time of death, our state of consciousness determines our next birth. Death destroys the body made up of the 5 gross elements, but the subtle elements consisting of mind, intelligence, and false ego remains. As the air carries the scent of the place it blows over, so the soul carries a person's subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego, along with his state of consciousness, on to his next birth, and his body is determined accordingly. When a breeze blows over a garden, it carries the fragrance of flowers with it, but when it blows over a rubbish heap, the breeze is filled with the stench. Similarly, the activities a person performs during his lifetime continuously influences his mentality, and at the time of death, the cumulative effect of these activities determines his state of consciousness. Thus, the subtle body formed during one's lifetime is carried over to one's next birth and manifests as the soul's next gross body. Naturally, therefore, the gross body reflects one's state of consciousness. As the popular saying goes, the face is the mind of the index. What? I read that wrong. The face is the index of the mind. Switch index and mind. And the mind is a product of the activities of one's present and previous lives. In other words, one's mind, intelligence, and false ego, which are influenced by one's habits in this and previous births. form the matrix that determines the type of body and mentality one will have in the next life. Hence, the connection between one's previous, present, and future lives is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So when people go, if people are having a tough life or whatever, they go, what did I do to deserve this? I don't deserve this. I didn't have a choice. This is all forced on me. No. You are choosing now by your selfish or your selfless activities. Your nasty or your nice activities. What you're cultivating, the mentality you're cultivating, is developing your future life. And when you die, then you're attracted to that situation. Your consciousness carries you to the situation of mixed happiness and distress based on what you're attracted by. So if you do nasty things your whole life, then you'll be attracted to some kind of nasty situation, thinking it's very good because you'll be able to continue your behaviors. Of course, this becomes a big problem for a lot of people because there is no standard anymore for what is nice and what is nasty behavior. People just say, well, do whatever feels good, you just do it. Even if it makes you feel good for this amount of time and then this amount of time, it's just suffering. So, well, if it made you feel good for that amount of time, then it's good. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. Relativism. So the activities of the day evoke dreams at night and induce emotions appropriate to those activities. Similarly, the activities performed in one's lifetime flash across one's mind at the moment of death and determine one's next life. Therefore, if one's present activities are directed towards chanting, hearing, and remembering the Supreme Lord's transcendental name, along with descriptions of his beauty, qualities, pastimes, associates, and paraphernalia, then one's consciousness, at the moment one leaves one's body, will be attracted to the Lord. Such a spiritual state of consciousness at the moment of death ensures the soul's entry into the Supreme Lord's eternal abode in his very next birth. To awaken this spiritual consciousness is man's prime goal in life. We therefore find that Lord Krishna, out of compassion for the conditioned souls, instructs Arjuna to fight at the same time, remember him. This is called karma yoga. Therefore devotees always remember him in all their activities, in their endeavors for food and safety, and even in the middle of the battlefield while fighting a war. Life being like a battlefield in which one may die at any time, the devotees remember him at every moment, and he willingly becomes the charioteer of their chariot-like bodies. The activities of their bodies, minds, and words are thus prompted by the Supreme Lord's will, and at the end, when they leave their gross and subtle bodies, they go directly to the spiritual sky. The prime symptom of pure devotional service is constant chanting, hearing, and remembering of the holy name. Mixed devotional service, as we previously discussed, is devotional service adulterated by karma, fruit of desire, and jnana, attachment to knowledge. Such devotional service is often impeded by the particular situation or association a person finds himself in. But there is never any impediment to pure devotional service. Perfect realization of the Supreme Lord does not occur until one is firmly situated in unalloyed devotional service. Lord Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad-Gita 18:55. Bhaktyamam abhijananti yavam yaschasmi tattvataha. Quote, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by pure devotional service. Unquote. And in the verse 8:14, in verse 8:14, the Lord mentions the primary characteristic of this pure devotional service. Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yukta sayoginaha. Quote, "For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain. O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service." Unquote. Undeviating concentration on the Supreme Lord is the first sign of pure devotion. In other words, a pure devotee is one who wards off all desires and thoughts not related to unflinching devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Many spiritual stalwarts have commented upon pure devotional service. For example, Srila Rupa Goswami, the foremost of the great spiritual preceptors in the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wrote in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11, "Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama." Quote, "One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service." Unquote. People propitiate demigods to satisfy their material desires. Those neophyte devotees of Krishna who try to appease demigods like the sun god in order to escape ill health do so because they succumb to serious doubts about Lord Krishna's supreme divinity. In analyzing the word anyabhilasha, desires other than those directed towards serving Lord Krishna, we find that one fosters this type of perverted intelligence when one thinks that the sun god, who is merely a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's potency, can protect one from ill health, but that the Supreme Lord Krishna cannot. Once these mind-clouding doubts disperse, one enters the doors of pure devotional service. Karmis and jnanis are also tainted by material desires. The desire to enjoy their senses, and the desire for liberation, respectively. Pure devotional service is attained only when these material desires are dissipated, and one renders unbroken, favorable devotional service to Lord Krishna. The great sage Narada has said, "Sarvopati vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate." Quote, "Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto Him, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and, simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified." Narada Pancharatra. Unquote. The various identities a person adopts in relation to his mind and body are all material designations. The pure soul is unencumbered by such mundane designations, for the only identity he has is that of a servant and inseparable part of the Supreme Lord. Thus, with the shedding of all false designations, one enters a state of trance, and when one is firmly situated in trance, one becomes pure. Serving the Supreme Lord, the Master of all senses, with such purified senses is unalloyed devotional service. In Bhagavad-Gita 8.14, the two words ananya chetaha, without deviation, and nityayukta, regularly, are very significant. One cannot become undeviated in devotional practice without being fixed in undeviating faith. When a person regularly serves the Supreme Lord with this faith, he automatically loses all desires for fruitive activity, speculative knowledge, worship of the demigods, and ritualistic pious activities, and he becomes undeviating in his devotional service. The word satatam, always, must be understood to imply that devotional service is independent of time, place, circumstance, adversity, and so on. Everyone, regardless of race, caste, sex, or other material designation, can give up mental speculation, fruitive actions, and yoga practice, and take complete shelter of Lord Krishna's lotus feet without deviation. The word nitya means daily, regularly, or constantly. Those who meditate constantly on Lord Krishna's lotus feet can easily attain him. As Lord Brahma states in the Brahma Samhita 533, Advaitam achyutam anadyam anantarupam madhyam purana purusham navayovanam cha vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha, yet he is a person possessing the beauty of a blooming youth. Unquote. In the process of executing religious duties, performing fruitive activities, cultivating empiric knowledge, and practicing mystic yoga, much endeavor, time, and money is spent. One has to accept the sinful reactions along with the pious results of such activities. The only way to nullify these results and reactions is to worship the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus worshipping and serving Lord Krishna are the only advantageous activities for the entire world. The Supreme Lord is the embodiment of eternal bliss and is always engaged in transcendental pastimes. The only thing required to worship him is undeviating devotion. Ostentation will not please him. Devotional service to Lord Krishna does not produce hate or envy. Only the agnostic reprobates are strongly opposed to the Lord's devotional service and his devotees. One derives the greatest bliss in devotional service. Indeed, when one finally obtains the Lord, it is like being drowned in an ocean of unlimited ecstasy. Only the devotees of Lord Krishna can taste this ecstasy and be always joyful. Okay. The next segment is called Under Illusion of Maya, Man Has Forgotten Lord Krishna. The karmis, jnanis, and yogis, as well as the common politicians, and anyone else who is working hard to make a comfortable and peaceful situation in this material world, must clearly realize that the world is transitory and full of misery. However much one may toil to make a permanent settlement in this world, at the end everyone is forced to leave. As long as one stays here, one must come to grips with the reality of suffering. Since time immemorial, the soul has been coming and going. The Lord's devotees, however, not only live happily in this world, but after they leave here they enter the eternal and ever blissful abode of the Lord. As the Lord says in Bhagavad-Gita 8:15, Mam upetya punarjanma dukkalayam shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha sangshidim paramam gataha. Quote, after attaining me, the great souls, who are yogis in devotion, never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Unquote. According to the above verse, the devotees attain the highest perfection. That is, they join the elevated core of the Lord's eternal associates. The mystic yogi's eightfold mystic perfection is not the same as the devotee's parasiddhi, or highest perfection. While the mystic yoga brings perfections that are material and temporary, devotional service to the Supreme Lord brings about absolute perfection, which is transcendental and eternal. The Supreme Lord incessantly manifests his ever-fresh transcendental pastimes within this unlimited material universe, which he has created. These pastimes, known as Bhauma Lila, have been going on since time immemorial. The sun remains in one place, yet somewhere on the earth, people see it rising, while elsewhere people see it setting. This rising and setting has been going on since the dawn of creation. Similarly, although Lord Krishna eternally resides in Goloka, his eternal abode, he manifests his transcendental pastimes at every moment in the countless universes of this cosmic creation. As it is a mistake to think the sun rises and sets, it is a gross misconception to think that Lord Krishna was born on such and such day, and was slain by someone on such and such day. The Lord's birth and activities are all transcendental and miraculous, and those who can comprehend this esoteric truth attain the highest perfection. As the Lord states in the Bhagavad-Gita 4:9, Janma karma chamev divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam meti sorjuna. Quote, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Unquote. When Lord Krishna desires to manifest his earthly pastimes, he appears through his eternal parents, Srimati Devaki and Sri Vasudeva, and is later brought up by his foster parents, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. Saintly souls who perfect their devotional service by following in the footsteps of the Lord's eternal parents are elevated to the highest position as eternal associates of the Supreme Lord. Once having entered into the Lord's eternal transcendental pastimes, these great souls relish super excellent devotional mellow and ecstatic love of Godhead. In the innumerable universes, Lord Krishna reveals his earthly pastimes with his intimate friend and eternal associate Arjuna. The Lord makes this clear in 2 Bhagavad-Gita verses, chapter 4, 5, and 6. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham vedasarvani natvam vetha parantapa ajopi sannavyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim svam adishtyaya sambhavam yatma mayaya. Quote, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy, although I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Unquote. As for those unfortunate souls who do not strive for the supreme goal of entering the eternal pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and instead become attracted to the mundane practices of karma, jnana, and yoga, which ultimately elevate one to the heavenly planets, such souls must once again take birth in the material world. Although they may reach a high status in this cosmic system, they must come down as if on a Ferris wheel. Krishna describes this phenomena in the Bhagavad-Gita 8:16. Abrahma bhuvanaloka punar arvitanojuna mamupetya tukunteya punar janma navidyate. Quote, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Unquote. The higher planetary systems in this material world are Bhurloka, Bhuvarloka, Svargaloka, Maharloka, Jannaloka, Tapoloka, and up to Satyaloka, or Brahmaloka. Whichever these planets one rises to in his next life, one must finally return to earth. What to speak of the next life? Even in this life, the higher position one attains after considerable hard work, such as a king, emperor, minister, governor, or president, is lost after some time, and one is thrown back to a mean and humble status. Only leaders who have experienced this kind of humiliation can know the trepidation that accompanies it. But if at any stage of life the grossly foolish miscreants described in the Bhagavad-Gita decide to render devotional service to Lord Krishna, they can escape the Ferris wheel of karma. On this wheel, sometimes one goes to heaven and sometimes to hell. Sometimes one is born a king and sometimes a slave. Sometimes one becomes a brahmana and sometimes a shudra, and so it goes on. But once a person enters the spiritual abode of the Supreme Lord, he begins his eternal life in his original constitutional position. By the influence of karma, one who is attached to the material body and mind has to change bodies life after life. In this way, the soul roams the 14 planetary systems within this material universe, sometimes going up and sometimes coming down. These planets are transitory, merely theatrical stages upon which the soul enacts his mundane existence. But when the living entity is elevated to spiritual perfection and is situated in his pure, eternal identity, devoid of all mundane designations, he attains the natural habitat of the spirit soul, the supramundane realm transcending this material creation, and the intermediary zone of the unmanifested Brahman effulgence. The material body, made up of material ingredients such as earth, water, fire, and air, is mortal. Similarly, because this material universe is an amalgamation of earth, water, fire, air, etc., it is also transitory. But the spirit soul, which incidentally has never been duplicated in the laboratory despite repeated efforts, is imperishable, as is the natural, eternal home, the kingdom of God. The process that takes the eternal soul to this eternal home, the process that takes the eternal soul to his eternal home is called Sanatana Dharma, or the eternal religion. Empirical atheistic philosophers like Kapila spent innumerable tedious hours researching the material phenomena of this cosmic creation. Yet it remained beyond the grasp of their limited intelligence to understand that there exists a realm transcendental and far superior to this manifested material world. Finally, when their probing minds failed to sight land in an ocean of speculation, they concluded that the absolute truth is unmanifest. Compared to other species, human beings are certainly endowed with good intelligence. Yet unless they are devotees of the Lord, all their thinking is limited within mundane boundaries. Therefore, it is impossible for the mundane mind to approach the transcendence. But instead of surrendering to the Supreme Lord or his representative, the empiric philosopher tried to explain away as unmanifest that which is beyond their mundane minds. This is known as the logic of the frog in the well. No matter how big a thinker a tiny living entity may be, all his activities are limited by mundane boundaries, just as a frog in the well can never comprehend that such a thing as an ocean exists outside his little domain. He refuses to acknowledge that the mass of water infinitely bigger than his tiny puddle can at all be possible. Similarly, we are trapped in the dark well of our body and mind, and although we may try hard through yoga or empirical speculation to overcome our limitations, no matter how erudite we are, it is impossible to reach beyond the limitations of our self-made well. So, who could bring us news of this great ocean? Is there any record of how long we have been struggling in the water to stay afloat in the well of this material world? Sometimes going up to the higher planets, sometimes coming down. Only the Supreme Lord himself, or his empowered representative, can possibly free us from confinement in this dark well. Under their guidance, we can come to know of the limitless ocean of the spiritual sky. This process, hearing from higher authorities, is called the deductive or descending process of knowledge. It is the only authorized way to learn transcendental knowledge. By this method alone is eternal truth transmitted. And what can we learn by this process? Lord Krishna describes the spiritual and material worlds as follows in Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 8, text 17 through 12. Quote, By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. At the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night they are helplessly annihilated. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifest and unmanifest matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is." Unquote. People become awestruck when they learn that the lifespan of Brahmaloka is many millions of years. One has to undergo severe austerities and renunciation, accepting the sannyasa order of life, in order to reach Brahmaloka. However, we must consider one essential fact. Even Lord Brahma, the presiding deity of that planet, is not immortal. Those who have researched the Vedic scriptures in depth can calculate the lifetime of Brahma. Human beings count 365 days in their year, and the cycle of 4 yugas comprises approximately 4,320,000 such years. 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas make up one day, 12 hours, of Lord Brahma's life. In this way, his month and year can be calculated, and Brahma lives for 100 years of his time. But despite the vast lifespan, 311 trillion, 40 billion human years, Lord Brahma is a mortal being, and this universe created by him is also perishable. Thus it is not strange that human beings, who are also his creation, should perish. As human beings seem immortal to a tiny insect, so Lord Brahma and the demigods seem immortal to us. In fact, however, no material body of any form is ever eternal. At the end of Lord Brahma's day, when night approaches, a partial dissolution inundates the universe up to Svargaloka, the abode of the demigods. All the living entities of this world are created at the dawn of Lord Brahma's day and annihilated at dusk. And this creation and annihilation go on in a continuous cycle. Hare Krishna. So stop there. Hope that gives everybody some more perspective on their own spiritual lives and the importance of it. All the essential preaching points that Prabhupada that gives, everything I've ever heard him when he's in a lecture or he's in a conversation or something like that, it's coming out in this book here. What he would say, it's kind of like what would Prabhupada. It's like you can see Prabhupada thinking, what would I say to the world if I had their ears? If people were listening to me, what would I say? And that's what's in this book right here. It's pretty awesome. Seems like if we could just all read this book and memorize it, we'd all be expert preachers. It's a lot of work to do. So far we are 94 pages into it. There's 200 pages. So thank you very much. I am gonna go over to Discord if people want to discuss, share revelations, and anything like that. Here is a link. Boom, posted it there. And check it out. So thank you very much. Until next time, Hare Krishna.